titled this talk, "We Are What We Teach." My message is simply that the best approach we can take to assisting the infusion of the URANTIA revelation into the world is to incorporate the teachings of the book into our daily life. The expansion of our frame of reference resulting from the information the book contains is almost overwhelming. Think about it. That's going to time. Think about it. The description of trillions of inhabited planets organised by super-universe, major and minor sectors, local universes, constellations and local systems as a single grand universe is stunning. The array of personalities inhabiting this cosmos far transcends previous conceptions. And this is just the beginning, the prelude to even vaster and more complex projections in the outer space levels, and maybe even eventually the absolute and infinite realms in which this vast universe is contained. And that the infinite deity responsible for all of this is also the personal God who we pray to and worship, and who is interested in us, indeed loves us, and makes it possible for us to become more and more like Him, and even to fraternize with Him face to face. Even for our personality to fuse with an absolute fragment of deity. No previous frame of reference has envisaged anything like the paradise set by the technique experience. Nor has one ever revealed the post-finite experience of the finalities in absolute, and even absolute reality. No previous revelation has provided such comprehensive information about the four levels of reality: matter, mind, spirit, and personality. And we need to remember that this is what it is. It is information. The URANTIA book is not a religion. It addresses those things which underlie the development of religion, the spiritual impulses which lead eventually to the development of religions as our planetary culture has come to understand them. It is information. It is not sacred law. It is not the Word of God. The URANTIA book provides us with information about the universe in which we exist, and the God who is the creator and upholder of that universe. We students of the URANTIA book accept, we are convinced that this expansion of our frame of reference is a reality. It is not a fantasy or a fairy tale or anything which can allow us to cast doubt upon the veracity of what we read. We do understand that the beings who have produced these papers are not perfect, but they do know a good deal more about the state of things than we ourselves. We respond to these teachings this information, I should say, we respond to this information in all sorts of different ways. And I've made a little list here of some of the things which we respond to the teachings with. We think of doing the will of God. We think of loving God and serving Him. Following the leading of our indwelling adjustment. Cooperating with our celestial supervisors. Being devoted to truth, beauty and goodness. Establishing the brotherhood of man under the fatherhood of God. Achieving the psychic circle. Contributing to the growth of the Supreme. helping the planet towards life, moving the seat of our identity from the adjective mind into the soul, living a spiritually fragrant life, living a faith-dominated life, living as in the presence of God. Now, this is a little list which I compiled. I'm sure that you will want to add to that, or possibly it was a draft list, I don't know. But in a practical sense, in our day-to-day lives, if you're doing any one of these things, you are probably doing all of the others too. The thought adjusters that inhabitants that indwell our mind, and the various spiritual influences, the Spirit of Truth, Michael's Spirit of Truth in particular, coordinate all of these influences so that they appear to us as a single impulse. And you can call it any of these things, but what it amounts to is we are attempting to follow this lead. In a sense, it's not so much that we believe in life after death. Yes, we do. What we are really trying to do is lead the life now that we will be leading into eternity. We are beginning now to lead the life which we have and the life which we will persist within. And death, as we know it, physical death, is simply a milestone on the way. So that we think of ourselves now as beginning the journey which we will be participating in for possibly trillions of years. We don't really know the time scale, but until we meet the Father face to face. Now, what I'm trying to emphasise in my talk today is that we can do any and all of these things now, in our daily life. Gaetan mentioned very astutely in his talk a couple of days ago, I think it was, that there's nothing special, there are no special techniques that are involved in following this path. We follow our daily lives, and in our daily lives, and as we perform our daily functions and duties, we keep before us the notion that this expansion of our frame of reference allows us to, indeed almost compels us to remember as a constant, gentle, leading pressure behind everything that we do in our daily life. I really love something that Jesus said to the mistress of a hotel, an inn, as it was called in those days, when he was returning with Damien and David from his travels in the Mediterranean region. And he says to this hostess, "Minister your hospitality as one who entertains the children of the Most High. Elevate the drudgery of your daily toil to high levels of fine art through the increasing realisation that you minister to God in the persons whom He indwells by His Spirit, which has descended to live within the hearts of men, thereby seeking to transform their minds and lead their souls to the knowledge of the Paradise Father of all these bestowed gifts of the Divine Spirit." That's in paper 133, section 4. We just tend to do a lot better when we are inspired by our expanded frame of reference. Knowing that no act of good is ever lost, but always contributes to the supreme. Knowing that our mistakes are learning experiences. that we are all learning on the job. Knowing the future in store for all sincere personalities, these things inspire us to keep trying for progress, to keep working for truth, beauty and goodness, always alert to opportunities which may come our way. From little things, big things can grow. When I was young, I took a personal development course in which the tutor asked us to answer the question, what do you really believe? That sounds simple enough. What do you really believe? I was astonished to discover that I had great difficulty in answering that question. The truth was, I had no idea what my fundamental beliefs were. At that time, I did not believe in God. At least thought I didn't. Apart from that, listening to the discussion of others led me to wonder whether I believed in anything other than what was convenient at the time. This worry to discover that I had really little understanding of myself was somewhat chastening, to say the least. What followed was a long period of introspection and confusion, during which my life was turned topsy-turvy. I abandoned my career and began to drift, living from hand to mouth while I struggled to make sense of it. To discover some meaning in existence. I travelled, I worked at a number of different jobs. I began to read metaphysics, theosophy, science fiction, new age material, anything which seemed to address the question of the meaning of life and the place of the individual in the cosmos. After some years, I seemed to be getting nowhere, and in fact was beginning to despair of ever being able to make sense of my existence. All the time returning to that simple question, what do I really believe? Well, then a fortuitous set of circumstances led to my discovery of the URANTIA, and that's another story. And I quickly realised that here was something far more significant for my search than anything I had encountered previously. I was in the library in Sydney, and when I read about the thought adjuster, even though I had very little conception at that stage of what it meant, I was just intrigued. It was just something which grabbed me as nothing else has ever done. It was quite an astonishing moment in my life, sitting there in the reading room of the public library of New South Wales in Sydney. But anyway, well, I suppose you know what happened next. I became interested in the book, I got hold of the book, and I spent quite a bit of time running around telling everybody of my wonderful discovery. My family, my friends, everyone. And I bought them a silver. Many of you have possibly had this kind of experience. Okay. Now, of course, I'm not trying to say that this question, what do you really believe, was the sole influence which led to my turmoil, my inner discovery, but it was the truth. It was the catalyst which tipped me over the edge, if you like, and led me to devote myself to trying to establish some meaning in my life. And it taught me a couple of things as I reflect back upon it. I didn't realise this at the time. This is 2020 hindsight playing with us now. It seemed to me that in all probability the teacher who asked that question was really trying to get us, his students, to reach the conclusion that what you really believe is actually revealed by what you do, by how you behave. And much of our fantasizing about our beliefs does not meet this criteria. When we undertake something, we may not know the results. This teacher was asking this question of his students, but he really knew that he was throwing something out into the void, as it were, without having any conception of where it was likely to lead us. We may not know the results of what we do. Perhaps we never know. But at least from my point of view, it was a very effective lesson, one which culminated in my discovery of God and URANTIA. And as the mighty messenger on paper 117 quotes, the act is ours, the consequences God's. We all, this is a very common quote. I think it appears outside of the URANTIA book in many places, as well as in it. Would that be so, Jeff? We just cannot expect to understand the results of our efforts to teach. We teach to the best of our ability and hope that we have made a positive contribution. But the results of our efforts may take decades or more to yield fruit. And the fruit may be in a form we may not even recognise. The revelators point out to us a number of times that all the things work for the good of truth seekers in the end. And even though the end may not be manifested for years, decades, or possibly centuries or millennia, nevertheless, there it is. Sooner or later, that effect is felt. And sometimes it doesn't take much. The midwayers point out that those to whom Jesus taught the most, he said, look, somebody else has mentioned that also. Now, the second thing I learned from this exercise, once again in hindsight, is that when it comes to the discovery of truth, merely thinking does not produce the desired result. God cannot be discovered by reasoning logic. The truth seeker must be prepared to try it out, as we say in Australia, to give it a go, to see whether, to see what you can. And that's you won't understand that. Yeah. You've got to try it out. Be prepared to give yourself to it wholly before you can make any progress in this matter. The weak indulge in resolutions, but the strong act. Life is been a day's work, do it well, the act is ours, the consequence is God. From paper 48, section 7. Our Rodin said, religion can never be a matter of mere intellectual belief or philosophic reasoning. Religion is always and forever a mode of reacting to the situations of life. It's a species of conduct. That's in paper 160, section 5. We really only learn anything of real importance by giving ourselves wholly to it. And if I may digress a minute, there is nothing unscientific about this approach. The scientific method also includes the method of experiment. And in order to discover matters of truth, sometimes experimenting in giving yourself wholly to the question is what is required. And that is perfectly scientifically acceptable. So don't let the scientists put that over you. No doubt many of you, just like me, having become fascinated by the book, set out to tell your family and friends all about it and so on. And no doubt many of you, just like me, will get with ridicule, boredom, condescension, or polite indifference. Most people are not. So how would you go about the infusion of the fifth ethical revelation, he would will. I believe we serve the revelation best by concentrating on living the teachings that in our personal lives. There are great teachers among us, and if they are, that will be part of their personal life. If a reader really is a great teacher, let him teach. If he isn't, he will have some other quality to impart in a person-to-person way, or with a friend-to-friend, or in some other way. But everybody, Carol, has something to teach. The progressive personality leaves a trail of actualised reality as it passes through the ascending levels of the universes. Paper 117, section 5. As we go through our daily lives and make our decisions and perform our sometimes rather mundane functions, we leave behind this trail of actualised reality. It's like the wake of a ship which passes through the sum total of things and makes its mark and leaves its the ripples ripple out and leave its effect on the cosmos around us. And this is, once again, it is the way we conduct our personal lives that determines whether or not these ripples are going to be of consequence or not. The presence of thought adjusters in all of us allows truth to be lived in different ways. It is the indwelling adjuster who, this is a quote, it is the indwelling adjuster who individualises the love of God to each human soul. Paper 2, section 5. The adjusters try to find ways of making us receptive to truth in the many different forms of its expression and in the many different kinds of people that we are. When we do find truth, it is a result of the adjuster's efforts. When we conduct ourselves in conformity with the leading of our adjuster, this influence can be utilised by other adjusters, indwelling other personalities. Our teaching thus depends on our willingness to follow the leading of the indwelling adjuster, and it is this same willingness which constitutes our own progress. It's a wonderful symbiosis that the best thing we can do for ourselves is also the best thing we can do for the universe and for God. There's an identity of purpose here, which is worth remarking on. It begins with children. The Melchizedek who wrote paper 100 describes this in the first section when he says, children are permanently impressed only by the loyalties of their adult associates. Precept or even example is not lastingly influential. That's paper 100, section 1. I don't think the Melchizedek is suggesting that you should then provide bad examples for your children or anything like that. He's simply pointing out that it is the loyalty that your children can see which you hold for your own values and for your own children, which constitutes what they learn and what they keep from their learning. We do not remember, do we not remember as children being admonished by our parents or school teachers to do or refrain from anything? We just knew that they did not themselves believe it. And we readily learn that what they really mean by observing how they behaved and conducted themselves. Remember how surprised Jesus was to discover that Joseph did not know the cause of earthquake. Unless the father may have fobbed him off with God caused it. But Joseph was not afraid to admit his ignorance and retain Jesus' respect as a result. As we grow older, we almost unconsciously learn to discern what the true values are of those with whom we interact, as they do with us. How often have we had it pointed out to us that we say one thing and do another? I'm sure I'm not the only person who has had that experience. We all tend to use our own values in protecting the values of others, and we know that this distinction between conduct and professed belief is well established in worldly culture. It's not something new that the revelators have introduced. Most human cultures, or the ones I'm familiar with, understand that our values are measured by our conduct rather than our professed beliefs. So it comes as no surprise that what we really believe, what we place our faith in, is what determines what we do and strive for. And what we do and strive for constitutes the trail of actualised reality that we leave in the world as we go, the way we pursue. When we place our faith in God and pursue spiritual truth, the trail of actualisation we leave behind us contributes to the growth of discipline. In paper 196, the Midway Commission says, Jesus never argued about the fatherhood of God or brotherhood of man. He was a living illustration of one and a profound demonstration of the other. Paper 196, section 1. We sometimes get the impression that we all have to try and be like Jesus. But I don't think that's what Jesus wanted us to do. I think what Jesus wanted us to do was to be inspired by the same things as those which inspired him. The Father gave us all unique personalities, and he doesn't really want us to be all the same. There's a reason. He has a reason for making us all different from one another. So it is the question of what we aspire to, or what inspires us, which is what Jesus requires of us or asks of us. It's not a question of imitating him in his own way of life. And that's another. I'll come back again. Jesus never argued about the fatherhood of God or the brotherhood of man. He was a living illustration of one and a profound demonstration of the other. It was because of this that people were impressed by what he said. Some favoured and some opposed what he said. But all who heard him knew that he had something significant to say. He was effective because his bearing and conduct embodied his teaching. He was what he taught. And the Commission also points out that what is most needed now is Jesus. The world needs to see Jesus living again on earth in the experience of spirit-born mortals who effectively reveal the Master to all men. That's in paper 195, section 10. Insofar as they teach, it is the simple teaching of the brotherhood of man out of the fatherhood of God, a message few could fail to understand, at least superficially. And the effectiveness of the message depends on how well the teachers themselves live it. It's not what they say so much as what they do. Those to whom Jesus taught the most, he said believe. The message is simple and easy to understand, but whether the message has an audience or not depends on the degree to which the teacher embodies his teaching. We are what we teach. Pretty well everyone agrees that the brotherhood of man is a worthy idea. But at the same time, it's obvious that our planet is a long way from achieving it. What the world does not yet understand is that this brotherhood requires the recognition of the Father for it to be realised. Only when people realise that we are all spiritual children of the universal Father will the fact of brotherhood become obvious and its realisation possible. But only people who sincerely try to live as the children of the Universal Father are likely to influence those who do not know of the reality of the Father. Argument, logic and reason are impotent in the absence of faith and personal commitment. Only those who exhibit in their daily lives the love of God are likely to influence non-believers. One of my favourite passages from the book is found in paper 117. Quote, "The Father's love can become real to mortal man only by passing through that man's personality as he in turn bestows this love upon his God. The great circuit of love is from the Father through sons to brothers and hence to the Supreme." Paper 117, section 6. As the love of God passes through us, we know we can't imprison it within us. As it passes through us, to our fellows, it contributes to the growth of the Supreme and to planetary advancement. It is the experience of God's love which transforms lives and initiates faith. It is as channels of divine love that we influence our family. Thank you. We are not quite finished. I have a friend and fellow reader in Australia whose name is Nigel Nunn. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard of him. And he has... Nigel spends a lot of time... He's a scientist. He's good and younger than me, I should say. And he spends a lot of time with people who, for one reason or another, don't have faith in God. They are sceptical. They possibly, some of them have been indoctrinated as children by maybe priests or churches who are unwise in their ministrations. Who knows what it is? But Nigel spends a lot of time with these people, talking to them. And he has developed what I think is rather a worthwhile approach to them. And he's put it on a DVD, and Juan will now play this DVD for us. If I could ask and Grace, when the DVD starts, to do the lights. Then I should also mention that the DVD, unfortunately, has an English voiceover. Olga Lopez from Spain undertook to translate this into Spanish. And the translator will narrate the translation which Olga produced as the DVD is being played. So the DVD will play in English, and there will be a Spanish voiceover through the translation system. Thanks, Mike. Thanks.
Sonido. Repítelo. Sonido. Sonido.
Wow.
Se mute.
¿Tiene mute? ¿Mute? ¿Y qué parte no vuelvas a pasar por? ¿Lo vuelves a La atención también, sí, el computador tiene el sonido.
Sí.
Será entonces en la... Voy a pasar, voy a atravesar.
Dale, pásate.
Van a vender eso es para allá. Es el muñeco de es en inglés. En español no. No, en español lo están traduciendo y él va a mandar copias.
Y el volumen del computador está bien. Sí, está bien. Acá, el que aparece acá. ¿Dónde está? Sí, está bien. Sí.
¿Dónde está llegando? Yo lo tengo abierto allá. Hay puertas que ahorita no sonó.
Sí, no son. Aquí está. Está saliendo.
No tiene que salir acá.
¿Tú ya lo probaste? Ah, está bien. Este es el de YouTube.
Yo lo monté allí. Yo lo monté allí y le quitas a este cosito. Así te está sonando ahí. Espérate, todavía no. Yo te digo.
Vale.
Thank you, brother.
Un momento. Sí.
Sorry everyone, I'm having a few problems here. I thought we had
Estás en el hueco correcto. Sí. Tienes una lamparita ahí.
As humans, we're almost compelled.
A ver, el problema. Aquí sí.
No,
Falta allá.
no, ya. Ya porque hice yo algo.
¿A dónde? Allá.
Era él el problema.
Village was 3,000 ago, and we woke up each day to a sight like this. As humans, we're always compelled to try to understand and to explain things like the heavens above. But 3,000 years ago, our only tools for probing and exploring such things would have been our eyes, our minds, and that narrow set of beliefs and opinions, that little box within which our tribe could think. This famous little picture illustrates what's going on. Our tribe, our society built for itself a view of the world. This world view becomes the frame in which we think, like a box of concept and culture within which we live. But there's always someone who starts to think outside the box. It raises the question, how do we actually discover new things? As a group, are we agreed to accept some new idea as being true? When confronted by something we don't understand, when the cause of some effect is utterly mysterious, how do we respond? Well, as natural storytellers, our reflex is to make up a myth. In paper 115, the URANTIA puts it like this. If mind cannot fathom conclusions, if it cannot penetrate to true origins, then will such mind unfailingly postulate conclusions and invent origins that may have a means of logical thought within the frame of these mind-created postulates. This is not to criticize our systems of faith and belief, just to emphasize that as humans we are constrained to live and to dream within that framework of concept and belief that we and our society have been able to evolve. And as long as our myth remains consistent with our beliefs, or with the data we've been able to collect, we have the status quo. But a few hundred years ago, we discovered a way to step past such status quo. The scientific method. The true scientific method became a technique for evolving our own beliefs. It's helped us to learn something about the material world, even to glimpse the mechanisms of material life. But about ourselves, well, not so much. The phenomenon of man remains mysterious. In some ways, we're still in the same place as that poet in Palestine almost 3,000 years ago, whispering to his God, "What is man that you are mindful of him?" Even today, this remains a really good question. Why should the author of reality be interested in us? What's one more planet full of humans to the creator of an eternal infinity? This is precisely the question addressed by the URANTIA book. Now, at first glance, some may say, they're a bit long-winded, weren't they? 196 separate papers, over 2,000 pages of text. Others, like those of you who know the source of truth and love, may say, well, yes, but they've got some simple truths, way too complex. Okay, but if this answer is to be appropriate for the skeptical, scientific age ahead, if it is to be sufficient for scientists and philosophers, for mystics and religionists alike, think what was required. Before they could begin to explain our bodies and our minds, they had to adjust our basic assumptions about biology and psychology. Before they could begin to explain how worlds and stars and galaxies like ours evolved, they had to rework the foundations of our entire physics and cosmology. And before they could even begin to explain how we are salvaged from death, they had to reveal something about the extraordinary domain which bridges the material with the spiritual. And of course, our beliefs, ideas, and experiences of this spiritual or numinous domain could do with some clarification. All this preliminary explaining and setting up implies a biggish book, and here it is, all 2 kilos as first printed. So how do the authors of these papers answer that poet's simple question? What do they say is man? Why do they say might some God be mindful of us? Who are we? What are we doing here? What fresh ideas do these papers bring to the table? What revelations about ourselves do these revelators reveal? Here we face an issue. While personal revelation of truth and love unfolds within in ways too deep for words. A planetary or epochal revelation, as these papers claim to be, needs to be planted in a way that we can easily share. As words, as a set of those ideas whose time has come, as a framework of concepts that can be grafted onto the paradigms our cultures have evolved. And this is what's being attempted here, to allow them to present appropriate answers to this simple, crucial question. The authors of these papers had to sketch out a cosmology, a universe frame big enough and consistent enough to contain the answers they are attempting to give. Which raises another question. What sort of answers are we, skeptical, scientific, 21st century souls, willing or able to accept? What kind of answers does our scientific method even allow us to explore? Are telescopes our only means of contact? As a world, we anticipate contact with more than human life, but our scientific method has led many to believe that we are nothing but an evolutionary accident that no display of energy nor expression of trust can carry us personally beyond the grave. You can see the problem. How on earth to deliver, to present a wider view of the world, a bigger frame to a skeptical, scientific age?
I'm nearly done, ladies and gentlemen. That is part one of a three-part series. And I have given Andrea Lopez, Tamila's delightful assistant, a few copies which I brought with me for anybody who might be interested. And the only other thing I can say is it is available on YouTube. And I have the YouTube information with me if anybody is interested. Yes. And if anybody wants to obtain this material for use in their study groups or for any purpose whatsoever, perhaps the best thing to do would be email me, and I'll be home in a couple of weeks, and I can make arrangements to give you the YouTube information or something. All right.